Hey everybody, it's Friday night and I'm getting ready to do some maintenance here on my waterfall tank, so I figured we could do a simple before and after video. Not a lot to look at in the upper portion of this tank today. I'm not going to do a lot of gardening, but we will get to that in the latter part. We can have an update, go over everything, and have a better look at it. But the thing we're going to focus on tonight is the tank itself. I do not have the floodlight that shines down into the tank. You can see right there, that's not turned on at the moment. I usually turn that on later in the evening. But it is getting about that time. I'll wait until we've got the tank filled back up before I go ahead and do that. I will get in there and change out the filter. You can see how low the flow is right now. There's very little water in the waterfall. I don't know if I'll get video of actually changing that filter out or not, but we will get to see at the very least a before and after of what it looks like with that little bit of flow versus how much it's going to be after I replace the filter. And of course we will get the tank topped off, and I will probably get in there and you can see all that duckweed that's in there with the water sprite. I will probably get as much of that duckweed out as I reasonably can. I might even pull the water sprite out. I've got water lily in there. I've got the temple plant growing in there. I now have that sweet potato vine growing down in there. I don't necessarily need the water sprite, let alone that duckweed. So there you go. I guess we'll have a quick look at the whole tank for a moment. Again, not a lot's going to change between now and the after portion of this video, but that is in fact what it looks like at the moment. You can see little splashes of water falling back there. Again, you might get a better idea what that looks like when we've got a little more vigorous water flow and the lights turned on. So there you go. We'll call this your before. Alright everybody, I set the tripod up so we can get a look at the way I do my filter in this tank. First of all, what I use for filter material is just a strip of that polyester batting. I just cut it into a length and then roll it up something like that, fold it in half, something like that. You'll see in a minute. So that is the nasty wad that came out of there. I guess you can see that. And then this just gets stuffed in there, gets put back in, and now watch the water flow. Guess it would have been a little more impressive if we had done it with a full tank. It's already down almost to the level of the pump. But once it gets going, you can see there's a clear difference between a clogged filter and a brand new fresh filter. So that's about as low as I'm going to let the water go. I'm going to get in there and use a little bit more of that very same polyester batting. I'll just cut a smaller square of it, and I'm going to get in there and wipe down the glass. I've already pulled out the duckweed, and then this is the piece of water sprite that's in there. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just pull that out as well. I'll go ahead and throw that in my grow out tank. So remember, I do sell my water sprite. So if that's something that you're interested in, I've got not only water sprite, but Java fern. I'm cutting some pieces of temple plant. I'm developing some roots on the temple plant right now, so hopefully I'll have some of that available for sale very soon. And I do have one or two little bits of Anubias available at the moment. So if you check out my email in the description down below and contact me, we can make arrangements and I can get you some plants. Let me get back to it. I'm going to get on with it. So there's your middle section of this before and after. Hang on a minute and I'll see you for the after section. And this is the final product. So doing the water change makes a huge difference. The tannins in this tank build up really quickly and the water gets very tea stained. I like the tea stained look. I think it's pretty. but it makes it difficult to really see all the colors on those guppies in there, and there are some fantastic colors on those guppies in there, so they're worth being able to see from time to time. So it's a cyclical thing. It goes a few days, it gets darker and darker, and the water gets more and more tea stained, and then eventually I do a water change, and then I get a few days where the water looks nice and clear, and we start the cycle all over again. So I get to enjoy the best of both worlds. I did get in there and skim a lot of the stuff off the surface. I removed the water sprite altogether. I did miss a little bit of duckweed right there. Missed a little bit more duckweed right here. And of course we saw the filter get changed, and we got to saw how much more vigorously the waterfall is flowing now. So I didn't trim any of the underwater plants. I did trim the temple plant in the back a while ago, and you can see that little bit of new growth developing already. I'm getting some branching and some forking in there. This temple plant in the fore part of the tank has not been trimmed at all, so we should be able to get one shoot coming straight up out of the water, but it's going to take some time. As far as anything else I did actually manually go in and remove some of the sheets of green cyanobacteria. You can see like that green sheet on that piece of wood right there. I went in and removed some larger pieces of that in various places. There was a lot of it right there, sort of at the fork. You can see where it's sort of stained greenish color. Not where it's nice and clear. That's the work of fish in the tank. But where you can see the sort of stained green, that had the sheets of the green cyanobacteria on it. And I went in there again manually and just peeled them off by hand, pulled them out and threw them away. And we're going to keep on top of the tank that way. So other than that, I didn't do a gravel vac. I didn't get in there and trim the plants. As I said, I didn't do anything in the tank except wipe down the glass and change the filter. So the other thing we did was top off this tank. I didn't change the filter or clean it out or anything. All I did was add a little bit more water to get the level a little higher. And you can see, if you're a regular viewer, you'll know we did a video on this tank just a couple days ago, and you can see how vigorously the water was flowing in that video. If I can find it, I'll attach a card. And if you can see now, we do not have vigorous water flow at all. In fact, I put this piece of Java fern over here on this rock because the water was flowing along this rock and dripping down here, and it was keeping that wet enough that I thought it was going to survive. But now you can see we've barely got water running down that edge, and it's just kind of running across the bottom of the rock and dripping over on the other side anyway. So that is an ongoing struggle. Like this tank here, within a day or two, the filter gets clogged up and the water flow dramatically slows down. So what we did with the top section was a little bit of simple basic gardening. I got in there and pruned out some of the errant growth, things that were growing in places I didn't want, or things that were sort of past their prime and not looking very good anymore. We had a few of these, can't think of what they're called again. It's some kind of rush, pickerel rush. I was going to say it's named after a fish, and it's rush. So it's a pickerel rush. That's what all this stuff is. And you can even see it's growing up through my, you see this leaf up here, that's actually the pickerel rush, and it's growing through my arrowhead plant up there, and all intermingling with each other. And then of course I've got my sweet potato vine is probably going to grab a hold of the electric cord for the light that's hanging there, and it's going to start growing onto that here pretty soon. And I took the piece that was down here that was hanging against the light, and you can see it's got a burn mark, and it crimped it where it was burned against the light. So I moved that up here, and it's just going to sort of grow around this, and it'll probably start growing upwards once it gets to the tip. We've got more flowers on my geraniums. Got a couple of flower heads on there. Not really sure what else to talk about. All the flowers and plants and everything in here are just looking fantastic. The water sprite that I've got planted in that basin up top, you can see that's doing pretty well. My arrowhead plant over there is just doing fantastic. And then, as I've pointed out recently, my Rex begonia here is just hitting it out of the park. I've got these gorgeous flowers on there. Usually with the begonias, I don't care that much about the flowers. It's the foliage itself that I think is so stunning. And this is, you know, certainly an example of that. But you can also see some really pretty flowers in there too. And then, of course, when we look at that lit from behind or underneath, it almost looks like you're looking through stained glass windows. Just really some amazing stuff. And it's big. If you can see this planter down here, I mean, that's the planter it's in. And that's the begonia. It's just this massive begonia. Love it. And then this begonia was dying off, and we've sort of gotten it to come back and recover a little bit. I usually water it with water right here from the tank. I just sort of scoop a little bit out and pour it right in here, and it usually runs through. I don't have this one sitting in a tray or anything. It's just literally sitting on a little piece of, you know, that was to prevent the red-clawed crabs that used to be in this tank from climbing out. But it also serves as a nice little place to put this flower pot. And I don't have anything under it, so when I water it, it goes right through and runs right into this tank. So I got to be careful not to water it with a lot of plant food or stuff like that. And I get around that by using natural plant food, as in fish tank water. Fish tank water is fantastic for watering your plants. If you got house plants and you got fish tanks, when you do a water change, save your water, water your house plants with it. They'll love you for it. I have another begonia over here that hardly gets any light at all, but you can see it does get some light. It is surviving. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. I might have to move that, put that somewhere else. My dead nettles that are growing down here from all the way up to the top, that's where they're planted. And you can see that's more of the dead nettles. And then all of this stuff here, this viney stuff here, this is the dead nettles. And that's growing pretty good. It's all rooted in and it's growing up and in back there. And then back in there, I don't know whether you can tell, the Java fern is actually growing vigorously mixed in with all that other stuff. So I've got a lot of growth going on in there. And then all of that little bit of stuff is a type of stone crop. That's a succulent that I just kind of threw in there one day, and it's hanging on and it's still doing its thing. So I'm going to leave it in there. And I think today we can walk around the back side here. I know it's a little bit ugly. It's like approaching a restaurant from the rear. But then when you get down here and you can actually see the tank from behind, it looks completely different. And every now and again I come back here and I just sit on a bucket or something, or even just sit on the floor and just look at the tank from this angle. Looks completely different. Sounds different. The fish behave differently. Now, of course, you are seeing the back side of it, so you do see the filter and the hose and everything right there, but that's not that big a deal. I've been looking at fish tanks for enough years now that I can sort of mentally tune out the plumbing when I need to. We do our best to hide it and disguise it, but you can't always avoid seeing the pipes and the hoses and stuff. It's just part of having fish tanks. You can see the heater I've got there right there in the corner, so you know that's not very natural looking. But otherwise, if you just look at that, it's very natural looking and very beautiful. So there you go, everybody. That was my before and after look at my waterfall tank. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up back here and say thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss anything I got coming up. I will see you real soon on the next one, and don't forget, of course, this is my waterfall tank. So thanks again, and I'll see you soon.